Okay, so last time we talked about authentication as an idea. Um, Authentication is the practice of verifying that you are who you say you are, proving your identity to some remote server, which is a computer. Like, you can authenticate yourself to your friends just by like looking at them. I look at you and I see you and I recognize you and I know who you are. Occasionally that gets a little screwy if you know somebody who's like twins or something, but for the most part, it's pretty easy to authenticate your friends and people that you know. Um, Humans are really, really good at that kind of pattern recognition. Computers are not, so we have other ways of doing it. Um, the main ones, of course, are these three authentication factors, and these will be on the midterm. Um, Although sometimes we have to authenticate ourselves to each other using some of these other factors. So rather than just looking at someone's face, which is the third factor, let me get my laser pointer out. Boom. Um, so Ania got an email once from somebody, a friend of ours, a mutual friend of ours who we'd gone traveling with through when we were at BSU. And she got this email, and the person said, "Oh, Ania, I'm stuck in England, and I'm stuck in London, and I just got mugged, and I lost all my money, and I lost my passport, and I need like $50. So can you help me out? Blah blah blah." And Ania was like, "Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'll send you whatever I can. But first, can you tell me where we first met?" Which is a totally reasonable thing to ask, and any normal person would immediately understand what her meaning is, right? And of course, the reply was, "Ania, you're wasting time. You're like, I need this right now. This is an emergency." So they didn't answer the question. So obviously, it was a scam, and so then Ania contacted this friend through Facebook and said, "Hey, listen, I think your email's been hacked." She's like, "Oh my gosh, yeah." I said, "Change your password and everything's good." She's like, "No, I'm not in England. I'm in Wisconsin or something or whatever." She was not stuck abroad in some dangerous situation. So it's kind of funny. Uh, Anecdote. Okay, so this thing like sometimes works exactly the way I want it to, and sometimes it doesn't, and it bugs me. So we talked about password security. We talked about how we can calculate a password strength using this entropy formula, which I don't expect you to have memorized. But the one thing that's really important is knowing that this part of this formula grows really, really slowly, which means that the number of characters in your alphabet doesn't really have that much of an effect on how much entropy is generated. What does is this part, the number of characters in your password. So how long your password is the number one factor for deciding how strong your password is. So, if you're using just the upper and lowercase letters, that's a 52 character alphabet. That's like that's plenty. If the difference between log base 2 of 52 and log base 2 of 94 is not very much. It's like 4 and 6 or something like that. It's a really small amount. But you multiply it by 20, like say you have a 20 character password, then you've got a huge amount of entropy and a very secure password. So that's kind of the logic behind this. And the fact that the length of the password is the most important thing. So that's what you do have to remember is that length is the number one uh, um, uh, way of ensuring that a password is secure. Obviously, you don't use like really long dictionary words and things like that. But if you take a few dictionary words and string them together, then you can actually create something that's pretty secure. But special characters, exclamation marks and at signs and stuff like that offer a very negligible bump to your security. Yeah, we also talked about password vaults because while it is obviously the case that you should use a different password for every service, because the risk of someone cracking one of them and then opening up everything you own is the consequences of that happening are really, really high. But the problem is that is not a viable solution for a normal person. You cannot memorize every password that you have to create. It's a non-starter. That is not possible. So you have to find some other way of keeping track of them. And my solution is the password vault. You can use any, or some combination of these. I use Social Auth too. I use my Google account to log into lots of different services. Not so much Facebook, because I think that company is a little bit, I think they're pretty unethical right out of the gate. There's something fishy about Facebook's motives. It's not just to advertise at you. I think they actually have something else is going on with them. Yeah, so I urge you to just go to like lastpass.com and just check it out. Like start a free account and start playing with it. Install the browser extension and then just use it a little bit. And I guarantee that if you start using it, you'll become addicted to not ever having to type a password again. It's really nice. Or one of these other ones. KeyPass is a bit more fiddly. I don't really. It's really secure and it's open source, which is nice, but it's also not as easy to use. It's got some neat bells and whistles, and it does generate really nice random passwords, but it is it's not as easy. It's not as user friendly. It's really yeah. And then Dashlane costs money. I don't know. You can try it out. Multi-factor authentication we talked about. We talked a little bit about biometrics. The big problem with biometrics is you've really only got one set of fingerprints. And so if there was some way that you could replicate somebody's fingerprints, then you can't change your fingerprints. Those are permanent. So there's some potential issues that come about with fingerprint scanning as a security measure. So definitely something. Biometrics, I think, are kind of the way we're going to go in the future, but they've got to get around some interesting hurdles before that's going to be a viable solution in the future. Okay, malware. So this is what people use the word virus a little loosely. But viruses are actually computer viruses. What we would define as a computer virus is a program that installs itself on your system and replicates itself. That isn't something that people really do anymore. Nobody writes programs that do that. They're really, really quite rare. What is a virus? It acts much like a regular virus, like a coronavirus or a rhinovirus, like the common cold. Those replicate by infecting a cell, replicating themselves, and then as it's spreading out. And that's exactly how a computer virus works. It replicates itself, it writes itself to a whole bunch of places on your hard drive with the intent of crashing and bringing down your system. The problem with viruses in their purest form is nobody does anything for free anymore. Most of the people that were writing viruses were doing them as a joke in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. They were really just it was more of an experiment to see if you could do stuff like that. And so the technical term virus isn't really a thing. What's much more common these days is what's called a Trojan, like a Trojan horse, like the horse that snuck into Troy and then a bunch of dudes with swords chopped everybody to pieces. A piece of software that pretends to be a legitimate piece of software and then infects your system and does all sorts of fun things like encrypt your hard drive and demand a ransom. Do you guys remember that? It was like January. I know a lot of other things have happened since then, but that did happen to the LLBO. Do you guys remember hearing about that? The band got attacked by a ransomware attack. I think they demanded like $1,000 in bitcoins for the password to decrypt their entire database.
I remember that they were down for like a while.
Are they back up yet, Josephine?
I'm not sure, but I remember hearing it from one of the people who worked there, and they wanted more than that, and they wanted like I don't know, but it was pretty crazy.
Well, the ransom kept going up, I think. That was what my friend that works in IT over there was saying. Yeah, this is like just crazy stuff. And I don't think they ever paid the ransom. I understand that for some reason, tribes have been hit by these ransomware attacks more pretty frequently. And I guess there was one tribe in South Dakota that did actually pay the bounty, and got their data back. Like they, and I do think that these hackers or whoever they are, the people who are distributing these Trojans, I think they have a vested interest in being upfront and, you know, on the level with this. Like, yeah, they're doing something bad, but if they don't come through and give you the password, then nobody's going to ever pay the ransom, and they're not going to make any money, because this is all a profit motive. You know, everything is a profit motive. That's why nobody makes viruses anymore, because there's no way to make money with a virus. All you can do is break stuff. So there are three main ways to deal with malware. You have antivirus software, usually what they call it's technically anti-malware software, but usually people say antivirus. Then following a set of best practices for how to be safe online, and then just always being kind of vigilant. Vigilance, best practices, antivirus software. Antivirus software is obviously the most important. So let's look at this. These are the ones. Okay, so these are my opinions. These are somewhat educated opinions based on research and experience, but these are my kind of recommended go-to ones. The first one with Windows. So again, this is somewhat Windows centric, but Malwarebytes and Super Anti-Spyware have versions for like Android and iOS and Mac OS and stuff like that. So you should be able to find the same antivirus software for pretty much all those systems. But Windows Defender is actually really good. It's a really solid real-time firewall and antivirus program. Windows, for some reason, in like 2011 or 12 or something, decided they were going to get serious about security, and they really did it. They really came through. The built-in security suite in Windows is really pretty solid. It's a bit of a system hog, and sometimes I shut it off if I'm playing a game or something, but for the most part, it's really good. Like, it really does the trick, and it keeps your system pretty locked down. Nobody can get in. It's an active firewall. You have to specifically give permission to every app that wants to access the web. You may have seen it. If you have a Windows computer, a little thing will come up and say, this program wants to access network resources. Do you want to allow that? You can say yes or no. And that alert will come up no matter what. Like, there's no way that anyone can trick the system into not giving that alert. Malwarebytes is a great app. The free version does not offer real-time protection. It is, it's kind of a, it's sort of a, I would say the word is like freemium. But the free version is really solid though. Like it gets everything. Like if you have an infection in your computer, run Malwarebytes, run the free version. It will find it and it will eradicate it. It's really, really. They update their databases every single day, and I would highly recommend just running it once a week, and it'll find potentially unwanted programs pretty much every time. Now, I don't know, I guess I hasn't found anything on my computer in a while, but I don't really do a whole lot of dodgy stuff on my computer anymore. I'm pretty on the level these days. Used to pirate a lot of video games and software from Pirate Bay, and occasionally you'd get an infection from that if you're not careful. Oh, and like after Napster was shut down, there were a whole bunch of imitators out there like Kazaa and Bearshare and all those ones. And those ones, like, you're just trying to download some music and you just end up with a bunch of viruses. It was such a bummer when Napster got shut down. Early 2000s were awesome. Then Super Anti-Spyware has a slightly different focus. It's more for getting rid of things like tracking cookies and things like that on your computer. I'm telling you, because Malwarebytes will get the nasty infections, and Super Anti-Spyware will get rid of basically cookies and other little apps that are trying to track what you do, to do things like target advertisement and gather data and stuff like that. They're not necessarily for hitting, the heavy hitter, but it's a nice little thing to run. Like if you run all three of these things, you're going to be good for the most part. I don't think there's much that can get by these three. If they're totally updated and ready to go, those three apps can pretty much protect you from just about anything. That said, there are a few other ones out there. I used to use Avast. I think that they're still pretty good, but they got kind of annoying with their constantly trying to upsell you on their paid plans. AVG's solid. Avira, I've never actually tried, but I've heard good reviews. I guess Bitdefender's kind of at the top right now. If you're on a Mac, Kaspersky is kind of the go-to antivirus software. So for Apple, and contrary to popular belief, Apple computers do get viruses. It is a thing. They're not invulnerable to it. Actually, if you want a computer that really doesn't need antivirus software, get a Linux computer. Nobody writes viruses for Linux computers. I will say this, and again, this is my disclaimer is that this is my opinion, but don't ever install Norton or McAfee. If you buy a new computer and it's got it, just uninstall it. I mean, even if they give you a free year of their service, still just get rid of it. It requires so much system resources. It's such a, especially if you've got an inexpensive computer to begin with, it's going to hog all of your computer's resources. It'll do the job. Like it'll get the viruses off your computer, but it'll constantly try to upsell you on paid plans and use fear tactics to manipulate you into doing things that, you don't need to do. And also John McAfee, the guy who founded McAfee, is a terrible person, and you should not support him in his salacious habits. He's just a bad person. I think he's wanted on felony charges in more than one country. So yeah, terrible person. I would stay away from McAfee, and Norton's not a whole lot better. I would argue that they are themselves basically malware, with their constant badgering you to give them more money. Let's see here. Best practices. So what do you do to stay safe online? So here's kind of my list of things. Let me get out a web browser here. There's one. Boom. Okay. So watch what you click. This is kind of like fake download buttons. This is what you'll see on some websites that you're trying to download some piece of software from. You'll see, here's a website where someone's trying to, from FileHippo, they're trying to download, I guess, a Skype client. One of these buttons is the right one. All of the other buttons are not. These are all fake download buttons. And this is a common tactic among advertisers to put a download button on their ad that is the same color as a standard download button. And you look at this website and it, if somebody doesn't know what they're doing, it can be really easy, especially this one right here, to click that one and not this one. They're really good at trying to trick people into clicking the wrong thing. And so watching what you click and being absolutely certain that you're clicking on the right link is really, really key. Especially if you're downloading software like that. I don't know why you'd be downloading the Skype client from FileHippo, but still. A lot of these ones, I sometimes download free software from websites like SourceForge, which has kind of gone downhill in quality. SourceForge used to be a great place to get free software. Not illegal free software, just stuff that's open source. People would host it there. I believe even the University of Minnesota hosted an image of SourceForge. It's like a place for open source projects to host their stuff. I don't think they really do it anymore because they've gone downhill and there's a lot of fake download buttons, and these fake download buttons are a serious problem. So watch what you click. Beware of advertisements, even on reputable sites. There's a number of websites that don't vet their advertisers. Forbes.com won't let me look at their website because I use an ad blocker. And I'm not going to turn it off for them because they got caught not vetting their ads. And like Forbes.com, this is this big, reputable, supposedly reputable news media outlet, economy news media, economic, financial, whatever. And there were ads that were being displayed on their page that had hidden what are called cross-site scripting attacks. It was basically a way of getting your computer to go to another website without you knowing it, and then using it to steal information and whatnot. And this is a big website, a place that gets millions of hits a day, and they weren't vetting their advertisements. So to that end, I also recommend using an ad blocker. If it's a website that you trust and you want to support them, you can whitelist them, but have the ad blocker on, guys. It's really, really critical that you not let them bully you into looking at their ads. Any website that says, "Will you please whitelist us on your ad blocker?" I just don't look at their website anymore. People need to figure something else out because the ads are terrible. They don't help. They're full of the advertisements themselves have nefarious code written into them. Not always. It's not common, but it does happen, and that's the problem. So I just recommend using an ad blocker. There's nothing illegal about it. You might as well do it. Also, as a best practice, there's a little rule here. There's only one place to ever type your password. Where is that place to type your password, guys? It's on a little screen that says username, password, and has 2 blank boxes. It's called a login screen. And the reason I tell you this, the reason I tell you there's only one place to ever type your password is a very common social engineering attack involves just straight up asking people for their passwords. And you'd be surprised how many people are totally willing to tell you their password. And you can't trust anybody. Anybody that would tell you their password is not trustworthy, and anybody that would ask you for your password is not trustworthy. Whenever I have somebody type in their password, I always say, you sit down, you type. I'm trying to help them figure out something with their account. You sit down, you log in, and then I look the other way. This is just a personal thing of mine. I don't look at the keyboard. I don't watch them type their password. I take it pretty seriously as a personal rule. So this is what happens. This is the scenario. You are sitting at work and the phone rings. So like you're just a desk worker or whatever. You're working on your TPS reports. I don't know. And then the phone rings and you answer the phone and the person at the other end of the line says, "Hey, this is Dave from IT. I need your username and password. I need your login information for the security audit that I'm doing. It's for the IRS. It's something we have to do." And if that is actually Dave from IT, then he is terrible and should be fired, because that is a terrible thing to do. You should never try to get. You should have a way to reset your employees' passwords, but you should never have a way of recovering the plain text of their passwords. And you should never ask your employees for their passwords. That's ridiculous. You still want a backdoor into their account, but you do not want to be able to. You do not want their password in plain text anywhere. The only person that should know the password is the employee itself, him or herself, themselves. So never give your password to anybody. And if you work for a company that does require that, then I hope that you are able to leave that company as soon as possible because they don't do things correctly. And they're really, really compromising their company's security. I have heard about companies that do that. They like keep a master list of everybody's passwords, and it is an absolutely terrible practice. And nobody should do that. And it speaks to a very poor IT staff. Our IT staff is actually pretty good. They do pretty much everything right as far as I can tell. They're on the level and they know what they're up to when it comes to like security stuff. at the very least. They've been really helpful this past few months with this whole shenanigans. So yeah, our IT staff, their security practices are pretty good, except for this password reset thing. But I guess Dave is fixing that. The other thing that you always want to do is update your software. In 2015, when Windows 10 came out, they basically made a choice. They said, okay, people really suck at updating their software, so we're just going to do it without telling them. And I really think that everybody's better off for it. I know a lot of people complained about it, but people would just always ignore updates. They would just hit ignore, ignore, ignore for like years. People running Windows 10 or Windows 7 would just ignore their updates for years. Like Ania had like a year of updates backed up. It took like 8 hours to install them all at once. And I was like, you gotta not ignore it anymore. And so what Microsoft did when Windows 10 came out, is they just said, listen, you can't be trusted, so we're taking the control out of your hands. You can turn it off. You can turn off those auto updates, but my advice is not to. Just let them happen. It happens in the background. You don't even have to think about it. And occasionally, when you restart your computer, it's going to run those updates as part of the restart routine. It'll take a little longer to reboot, a couple of times a month. No big deal. So please keep your software updated. This is exactly what happened with the Equifax hack. Equifax uses the server software. It's called Apache. It's a really, really common software that, despite its cultural appropriation in the name, it's one of the single most popular server softwares there is. It just serves up web pages. No big deal. But as a general course of software development, you constantly update apps like this. You constantly issue security patches and things like that. Well, they had a server in South America that hadn't been patched in like 2 years or something like that. And so it had a known security vulnerability. And so companies like that are constantly being pinged and attacked and tested and poked and prodded. Like I think the IRS undergoes like, I don't know, some number of hundreds of thousands of attacks every day, like DDoS attacks and things like that. And so their firewall is pretty ridiculously powerful. But anyway, Equifax basically had just neglected to update their software on one of their servers in one of their data centers in South America, and someone found it, discovered that vulnerability, and hacked it and stole a whole bunch of information about people's credit histories, credit scores, credit cards, financial history. I mean, it was just insane. It was a huge thing, and they didn't even really get punished for it. And it just drives me nuts that was the case, that they just got away with being basically terrible at their job. So always update your software. Always. Don't run out of date software. And yeah, so the reason for the solution is basically most companies have started auto updating things and not leaving it in the end user's hands. And they've done a really good job of making those updates unobtrusive. So there's that too. So basically, that's how you deal with malware of all sorts. Is just make sure you follow some basic rules. Always know exactly what you're clicking on. Don't be suspicious of everything. Don't believe the people on don't believe an email that says they're a Nigerian prince, that sort of stuff. Well, that's on the next slide. Scams. Be suspicious. I'm not saying I'm not saying that it's a scam, but it's probably a scam. It's almost always a scam. What scam calls are you guys getting these days? I know you guys are getting them. Somebody's getting them.
Car warranties.
Oh, the car's extended warranty. Yep. My favorite way to mess with those guys is to tell them my car's a Model T, and they just hang up. Any other ones?
The phone. I refuse just to answer the phone if I don't know the number.
Yeah, so my phone has started doing this thing where it says caller verified, and I'm like, oh, that must be a real number, and it is. But yeah, like right now, like because school is in session, I have to answer my phone because I gave out my phone number to all my students, so I've had to answer more scam phone calls lately than I usually do because I don't know everybody's phone number. So it's been kind of fun. One thing I do that really pisses them off is I'll try to click through to an operator, an actual human, and then just not say anything. They get mad. I get sworn at a couple times. It's pretty fun. Let's see, credit card scams. There's an IRS one, or no, I'm sorry, Social Security one. The Social Security scam is really bad because there are people that will get freaked out about that. Oh my gosh, there's something wrong with my Social Security account because of some crime in Texas, is what they usually say on mine. It's not true. The IRS, or I'm sorry, the Social Security Administration does not contact you via telephone. They always use mail. And when it comes to Social Security, nothing is ever an emergency. Everything takes months to resolve. You don't have to worry. Nothing has to happen right now. You just read the letter. If there's a letter from the Social Security Administration, then you got something you have to deal with. But in all other respects, it's a scam. If they call you on the phone, it's a scam. It's not real. So the phone scams are a big deal right now. There doesn't, part of it is because, so the reason that this has become a problem is our phone system has no way of validating phone numbers. If you call somebody on the telephone, there's nothing that's verifying that your phone number, so you self-report my phone number. So for the caller ID system, I self-report my phone number is 218-556-0468. That's it. And I don't do I don't do anything else. My phone number, I'm kind of bummed because I shouldn't have said that because I'm going to be posting this on YouTube. Still, it's not listed. Don't share the links to the videos for this class on the internet, guys. um, my phone reports my phone number to the other person on the other end, but there's nothing in between that's validating or verifying that. So I can spoof phone numbers really trivially easily. So that is the main problem with the whole caller ID system. There's no security, and for some reason, despite the fact that this problem is incredibly rampant, there doesn't seem to be an incentive whatsoever to fix it. Nobody's doing anything, and I don't know why. The FAA seems to be totally unmotivated to I don't know, issue sanctions against India, because that's where most of those calls are coming from, or what? I don't get it. Let's see. Email scams are kind of a thing of the past. They still kind of happen a little bit, but they're not really as much of a deal. I'll have a couple of videos that I'm going to share with you guys later on in the term that I think are pretty funny. You might get a kick out of. I usually show them live in class, but I don't think we're going to do that this time. The Nigerian prince thing where they want to give you some gold and you get like a percentage of it or something like that. I'm not entirely certain. They've kind of gone to the wayside, and these phone scams are much more common these days. Social media scams are big. They're like Ryan is outside somewhere.
Checking game cameras.
That's one way to, yeah, it's that season. Yeah, so social media, one of the biggest things that they can do on social media is make a fake account that looks like your friend's account. So if you get a friend request from somebody who you think is already your friend, it might just be a scam. This is a pretty common way of, and then there's just fake accounts. So I usually will always report them. Social media bots. So there's some speculation, some analysis that some really large double-digit percentage of users on Twitter and Reddit are in fact bots. They're not real. They're just robots that are spouting slogans for various political reasons and other stuff. Just propaganda machines. So that's kind of a big deal. So social media bots are a huge problem, not so much on Facebook because you can kind of personally vet your friends, but certainly on Twitter and Reddit and other services like that. The fake news thing, I'm going to show you this, and I'll link to this on the page along with this. What was it called? It's called the I had it just yesterday. News bias diagram. What is it called? Yeah, this is the one. Yeah. This is a really interesting study. This company or this organization, they're not. They create every year. They create a sort of like a diagram of the reputability of various news organizations. So you have organizations on the left, you've got organizations on the right that offer news, and they have some like amount of reputability, somewhat unreliable, completely unreliable, or somewhere in the middle. I like down here at the bottom of the diagram. I could see it before. There. I like this at the bottom here. Not particularly biased left or right, but the National Enquirer is totally unreliable because it's a tabloid. And then you've got some stuff on the left, Daily Kos, Alternet, Occupy Democrats, all these guys right here, super left-wing biased, but also not particularly reliable. There seems to be this interesting arch that's formed by this rating system. And it's really curious, this shape, this really regular shape that this creates. Seems to be the case that the farther to either end of the political spectrum you go, the less reliable your news is because you've got this really strong bias and slant. I'm not sure what the criteria these guys use is, but it is pretty interesting. And so the idea is that the stuff generally up here is more reputable and more middle of the road and balanced. And then the stuff over here and the stuff over here is going off into less reliable and much more biased territory. So something definitely to look at. Definitely worth checking out. It's just whether you believe them or not, it's something. It's definitely worth looking at them as an independent organization that kind of like rates media and gives you kind of an idea of where everybody is at. Anyway, just because it's kind of fun, I like to list off the top current malware or top cyber attacks. And this is kind of the last slide. So the first one is malware, always. Trying to install nasty software on your computer that does things that you don't want. The next most common thing is the consequences of unpatched software. Always update your software, guys. But one of my favorites is the phishing attacks because it shows that hacking isn't about some guy sitting at a computer banging on a keyboard. Hacking is really just trying to get people to tell you their password. 99% of the time, that's what hacking is. It's just convince some low-level employee to give you access to the system. That's it. That's what hackers do. They don't like have anybody see the movie Hackers from the 90s with Angelina Jolie and what's his name? Yeah, they're like rollerblading and looking all cool and have punk haircuts and stuff. They don't know. Hackers don't do that. They just ask you for your password, and if you give it to them, they'll get into your account. Man-in-the-middle attacks are fun. This is particularly common with software that doesn't use end-to-end encryption, like Snapchat and other social media apps that don't employ any kind of encryption. Basically, it is you have Alice and Bob, and they're having a conversation, and it's not encrypted, which means if Jimmy sitting in the middle is listening, he can hear everything that's going on between them. And what's interesting is that even if their conversation is encrypted, Jimmy can also gain some information just by looking at how much information is being transmitted. So there's not always a man-in-the-middle attack can be really, really sophisticated depending on how motivated the attacker is. Denial of service attack. A denial of service is not always a deliberate attack, a deliberate effort to attack somebody, sometimes it's just, a consequence of the internet's hard. Like I think it was like 2004. We landed a rover on Mars, and the NASA uploaded some pictures to the web, and I think it like brought down NASA's servers. People were waiting like 8 hours, millions of people, and like it was a single day record for hits on NASA's website, and I think it brought their service to their knees because they couldn't keep up with the demand to download like 5 pictures from the surface of Mars because people were that crazy about seeing these pictures. It was a pretty cool day on the internet. I mean, it took forever to download the pictures, but the next day you got them. They got everything restored by then. 0-day exploits are what happens when a company doesn't know about a bug and a hacker finds out about it first. So a hacker or somebody with bad intentions figures out that there's a flaw, a security vulnerability in somebody's system before the company knows, and then chooses not to tell the company, and instead exploits it. So the solution is companies offer bug bounties. A smart company will always say, hey, we have a standing $10,000 bounty if you tell us about a problem before you tell anybody else. The hacker communities almost always have forums where they post these vulnerabilities, but they can be persuaded with cash to wait and tell Microsoft before you tell all your hacker friends. It's called white hat hacking, and it's a really, really good practice. And any company that doesn't do it is doing all the wrong things. And some of the companies that are notorious for not offering bug bounties are banks. Which is why I'm really suspicious of banks in general, because it's a terrible practice to not offer bug bounties. It means that people are going to hack into your bank and not tell you about bugs that they find. What's worse is when they prosecute people that are after bug bounties. So anyway, that is that. I'm going to stop this recording. Oh, there was some stuff in the chats. Yeah, you get the warranty TPS reports. Stop recording.